I'm Jim Kirchherr, and this is the Mississippi River town of Clarksville, Missouri. Downriver is St. Louis, upriver, Hannibal. This town is celebrating its bicentennial this year. But we're not here just to talk about its glorious past or its reinvented present, but also about its uncertain future. That uncertainty has to do with the thing that made this town flourish in the first place, the Mississippi River. The last time I walked along Front Street was 2014, and it was behind a line of sandbags, protecting the shops and boutiques that are now the town's bread and butter. There wasn't much property damage here in this flood, but there was economic damage. Scenic Highway 79, it was closed, which meant no out-of-town tourists. And Mayor Joanne Smiley knew this was going to be a setback.
The extent of we are closed off, as you well know, south and north of the city. So tourism doesn't happen during this period of time. And when you cut 3 months out of the tourism for the community, you cut a great deal of the economics away from what we would normally have.
She also told me that day about a possible solution to the increasingly frequent floods, an expensive technology that could protect property while still allowing Clarksville to be the town where you can touch the Mississippi. According to the Bicentennial history book, Clarksville started up because it was the first good riverboat landing spot north of St. Louis. And 1817, when the first land deal was recorded here, that was the year the first steamboat reached St. Louis. So this was a good spot for business, or at least for speculation. And the boats did come. So did the mills and the factories, and the population grew to about 1,500 in 1880. It stayed a healthy little town well into the 20th century. In the 1960s and 70s, it might have been best known for the Sky Ride, a popular attraction that took people up to an observation tower atop what was billed as the highest point on the Mississippi River. It's been closed for decades. Most of the industry has gone, and the population today is just over 400. The river traffic still stops here, but just to pass through Lock and Dam 24. Winter brings eagle watchers. But downtown, the grocery, the bakery, the drugstores, they're gone. Still, others have found new homes in the historic buildings.
That's called the rake of the chair. Where on the side, the legs go out like this, that's called a rake.
Ralph and Karen Quick own the Windsor Chair Shop. They and their apprentice, P.J. Blanky, make Windsor chairs in the back, and they sell the chairs and Karen's jewelry up front. Ralph spent some time in this town as a kid, went to California, worked in law enforcement, met and married Karen, and then talked her into settling down in Clarksville, Missouri.
You know, at first she was against it, but you couldn't get her to go back on a bet now. Yeah.
And this is a charming town. It really is. Really nice people here, and the artists here are very sweet and very friendly, very helpful.
Being in business in Clarksville has always meant dealing with floods. After 2014, the Windsor Chair Shop moved off of Front Street and just a bit uphill around the corner, but they stayed. After the 2008 flood, the mayor says some businesses closed and never came back. If Clarksville takes 2 steps forward, any flood is 1 step back. But I imagine you've heard people say, I'd love to come here, love the place, worried about the floods.
Absolutely, yes. The investors with whom I speak on a pretty regular basis, we can get right down to brass tacks, and they'll look at me and say, and what do you do about flooding? And I mentioned sandbags in 2017, and they look at me as if to say, you know, modern technology surely provides you something other than a sandbag.
And it does. There's a flood protection system Clarksville's been working to get since the 2008 flood.
EcoFlood USA is bringing to America a concept of flood protection that has been employed in Europe for more than 20 years.
When floods come, the wall can be assembled in a day to protect property, and then it can be taken down. And Clarksville returns to the river town it's been for 200 years.
So we hope that we get that soon, and because we are the only town left actually on the river that has, no levee.
If there were a brick wall there or a concrete wall there, as there are in many places now, it just, nobody's going to turn the corner if they can't see the river.
Right.
That's part of the history. It's part of everything. It's part of our life.
It is, of course, the price tag that's holding all this back, $3.5 million. Clarksville's been trying to get the state of Missouri to put in the first million. If they get that, they can go for federal funding. In the process of talking to everybody about this, have you ever run into the idea that too much money, too small of a town?
Yes. Oh, yes. That was very clearly said to me in Washington. All have been positive beyond belief as we go through the story. And then they ask me what the population is and what the cost is. And, oh, yes, absolutely.
Population 450, cost $3.5 million.
So I understand that.
Keep in mind, most of the people in Clarksville don't work, shop, or live in the historic area that's prone to flooding. They live up on the bluff, and they've got water concerns too. Aging infrastructure has meant broken water mains, leaky reservoirs, repairs and upgrades that add up to $3.5 million. And they passed a bond issue to pay for that.
So as I spent the time as an alderman, I had in my head the thing we have to do is to provide safe water for this community, or it will not be able to sustain itself. So when I came in as mayor, that was my goal. Infrastructure was the name of the game.
And that's probably as serious an issue to this town as the river flooding.
Absolutely.
What does it mean as you look ahead? We're at the Bicentennial of this town.
Yes.
A great history, a colorful history of an old river town, and then a railroad town, and now an artist community. What's the future?
The future is a very questionable thing. I mean, I think all of us who have anything to do with trying to figure out a budget for the community ask that question almost every day.
So after 200 years, Clarksville, Missouri is still a work in progress. Maybe the Sky Ride could reopen one day. It is a possibility. Maybe they can bring in more businesses, a small industry, attract a grocery store for the residents. But a lot of that is dependent on updating the water and the sewer system, and of course getting the money for flood protection.
If we can accomplish that and can get ahead with this wall, I'll feel like we have made some progress. That will allow people to believe this community can thrive, survive, and move forward.